I was at my desk on a Tuesday afternoon, reviewing a marketing proposal, when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I almost sent it to voicemail, but something made me answer. The voice on the other end was cold and businesslike. A debt collection representative from Allied Recovery Services. He told me I was now solely responsible for $75,000 in wedding loan debt. My sister Brooke and her husband Justin had stopped making payments 3 months ago and had apparently left the country. The representative's tone never wavered as he explained that legal action would begin within 30 days if I didn't arrange payment. My hands started shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. I tried to speak, to explain, to say something, but nothing came out. Around me, my coworkers typed away at their computers, completely unaware that my entire world had just shattered. My sister had destroyed my life and disappeared, laughing all the way to the airport. I sat frozen at my desk, unable to process what I'd just heard. The fluorescent lights above me seemed too bright, the air conditioning too cold. My throat felt tight. How had this happened? How had I let this happen? My mind raced backward, trying to understand. It had started 6 months earlier. I was 32 years old, working as a marketing coordinator for a tech company in Phoenix, Arizona. I had my own apartment, decent savings, a credit score of 720 that I was proud of. Life wasn't perfect, but it was stable, safe. Then Brooke called with news of her engagement. I remembered sitting on my couch that evening, genuinely happy for my younger sister. She was 28 and had been dating Justin Parker for about a year. I didn't know Justin well. He seemed charming enough, always talking about his various business ventures, though none of them ever seemed to pan out. But Brooke was glowing with happiness, and I wanted to be supportive. 2 weeks later, she showed up at my apartment with 3 enormous binders full of wedding inspiration photos. We sat at my kitchen table while she flipped through pages of elaborate floral arrangements, designer dresses, and luxury venues. "So I've been doing the math," Brooke said, her eyes sparkling. "For the wedding I really want, we're looking at about $75,000. I nearly choked on my coffee. 75,000? Brooke, that's a down payment on a house. She waved her hand dismissively. It's a once-in-a-lifetime event, Edie. I'm not going to settle for some basic ceremony in a hotel ballroom. I want Paradise Valley Resort. I want the full weekend experience. I want my guests to remember this forever. How are you planning to pay for it? I asked carefully. Brooke looked down at her binder, then back up at me. Well, that's actually what I wanted to talk to you about. I need you to co-sign a loan with me. The word no was on my lips immediately. I'd taken a personal finance class in college. I knew the risks of co-signing. You're equally responsible for the debt. If the primary borrower doesn't pay, you're on the hook. Your credit gets destroyed. It's one of the worst financial decisions you can make. Brooke, I can't do that. Co-signing is really risky. If something goes wrong, her face transformed. The excitement vanished, replaced by something cold and calculating. If something goes wrong, you mean you don't trust me? It's not about trust. It's about being financially responsible. So, you think I'm not responsible? Her voice rose. Is that what you're saying? That's not what I meant. Suddenly she was crying, real tears streaming down her face. I can't believe this. I thought you loved me. I thought you'd want me to be happy. I do want you to be happy, but this is my one special day, Edie. One day in my entire life. And you're telling me you won't help me because of some stupid credit score? Brooke, it's not just about a credit score. It's $75,000. That's a massive amount of debt. She pulled out her phone, fingers flying across the screen. Before I could stop her, she had our mother on speakerphone. Mom? Edie won't help me with my wedding. What? My mother Linda's voice came through sharp and accusatory. Edie, what's going on? I tried to explain the situation calmly, rationally. Mom, Brooke wants me to co-sign a $75,000 loan. That's not something I can just agree to. Why not? You're the one with good credit and a stable job. Because if something goes wrong, I'm responsible for all that debt. Nothing will go wrong, Linda said firmly. Your sister needs this. It's what sisters do for each other. It's what family does. My father Thomas got on the line. Edie, I'm disappointed in you. We raised you better than this. Your sister is asking for help, and you're being selfish. Selfish. The word hit me like a slap. I'd spent my whole life trying not to be selfish, trying to be the responsible one, the reliable one, and now I was being called selfish for trying to protect myself. I just think we need to talk about this more, I said weakly. There's nothing to talk about, my father said. You're going to help your sister. End of discussion. They hung up. Brooke looked at me with those tearful eyes, and I felt the walls closing in. Over the next week, the pressure campaign intensified. My mother called me every single day, sometimes multiple times. My father sent long text messages about family loyalty and responsibility. Brooke sent crying emoji after crying emoji, along with messages about how I was ruining the happiest time of her life. Then, one evening, my parents showed up at my apartment unannounced. They didn't ask to come in. They just walked past me into my living room and sat down on my couch like they owned the place. We need to talk about this wedding loan, my father said. We would co-sign ourselves, my mother added, but our credit isn't good enough. You know we had those medical bills a few years ago. This isn't my responsibility, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. You're the responsible one, my father said. That means you have a responsibility to help. That's how families work. They stayed for 2 hours. 2 hours of guilt trips, emotional manipulation, and relentless pressure. They didn't leave until I agreed to at least go to the bank with Brooke. 3 days later, I found myself sitting in Southwest Community Bank with Brooke and Justin. The loan officer, Mr. Harrison, was a middle-aged man with thinning hair and a tired smile. He laid out the paperwork in front of us. So, we're looking at $75,000 at 12% interest over 5 years, he explained. That works out to monthly payments of approximately $1,600. $1,600. Every month. For 5 years, my stomach churned. I watched as Brooke filled out her portion of the application. Under employment. She wrote Senior Marketing Manager with an annual income of $65,000. I knew for a fact that Brooke worked part-time as a receptionist at a dentist's office, making maybe $25,000 a year if she was lucky. Justin listed himself as a business consultant earning $80,000 annually. I'd never seen Justin work a steady job. He was always involved in some multi-level marketing scheme or talking about business opportunities that never materialized. They were lying, committing fraud right in front of me. I grabbed Brooke's arm and pulled her aside while Mr. Harrison stepped away to make copies. Brooke, you lied on the application. That's fraud. She shrugged. Everyone exaggerates on loan applications. It's fine. It's not fine. It's illegal. God, Edie, you're so uptight. Besides, Justin's business is about to take off. We'll have plenty of money soon. What business? The supplement thing? The crypto thing? Which one this time? Her eyes flashed with anger. You know what? Just forget it. I should have known you'd find some way to sabotage this. She started to walk away. I felt panic rising. My parents would never forgive me if I backed out now. I'd be the villain, the bad sister who ruined Brooke's wedding. Mr. Harrison returned with the copies. Ready to sign? My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Did you sign yet? Don't let us down. I picked up the pen. My hand was shaking. But then something made me pause. If I was going to do this, if I was really going to risk everything, I needed some kind of protection. Mr. Harrison's phone rang. Excuse me one moment, he said, stepping away again. Brooke and Justin had gone outside to take a call. I was alone with the documents. I grabbed a piece of the bank's letterhead from the desk and wrote quickly, Addendum to Loan Agreement number 44782B. In the event of default by primary borrower Brooke Ann Brennan, and in the event that cosigner Edie Catherine Brennan is required to assume full payment obligation, the following parties agree to serve as secondary guarantors. Linda Marie Brennan, 1547 Maple Street, Phoenix, Arizona. Thomas James Brennan, 1547 Maple Street, Phoenix, Arizona. By signing this loan agreement, all parties acknowledge awareness and acceptance of these terms. I knew it was wrong. I knew I was forging their signatures. but they'd forced me into this. They'd cornered me, manipulated me, made me feel like I had no choice. If I was going down, they were coming with me. I signed their names as neatly as I could, then stapled the addendum to the back of the loan packet. Mr. Harrison came back. Brooke and Justin returned. We all signed the official documents. Mr. Harrison gathered everything up, including my addendum, and scanned the entire stack into the system. He never looked at it. Never questioned it. It became part of the official loan record. We walked out of the bank into the bright Arizona sunshine. Brooke and Justin were already on their phones, texting about venues and photographers. My mother called immediately. "Did you do it?" she asked. "Yes," I said quietly. "Good. I'm proud of you for doing the right thing." I stood on the sidewalk, watching my sister bounce excitedly toward her car, and I felt like I'd just signed my own death warrant. The $75,000 hit Brooke's account within 2 business days. She immediately booked Paradise Valley Resort for the following spring. I tried to tell myself it would be fine. The loan was Brooke's responsibility. I was just a backup. Surely she'd make the payments. The first payment was due 30 days after signing. I marked it on my calendar and watched the date approach with growing anxiety. When the day arrived, I texted Brooke in the morning. "Payment is due today. Just making sure you've got it handled." "Oh, I know. Don't worry about it, sis." By evening, I checked the loan portal online. Status: past due. My heart sank. I called Brooke immediately. "Oh my gosh, I totally forgot," she said, sounding completely unconcerned. "I'll send it tomorrow." "The payment is $1,600, Brooke. Do you have it?" There was a pause. "Actually, could you cover this month?" Justin's big business deal got delayed and we're a little short. "I promise I'll pay you back with interest." "Brooke, I can't afford to pay $1,600. That's almost half my rent. Please? I'm begging you. I can't have this loan go into default right away. It'll ruin my credit." Our credit, I thought. It would ruin our credit. Against every instinct screaming at me to say no, I paid the $1,600. It wiped out most of the cushion in my savings account. I told myself it was just this once. Next month would be different. Next month was not different. The wedding planning consumed Brooke's entire existence. She called me constantly with updates. The guest list had grown from 100 to 200 people. She'd hired a celebrity wedding planner from Los Angeles who charged $10,000. She'd found a dress designer who specialized in custom gowns. "Where is all this extra money coming from?" I asked during one of her calls. "Oh, we're using credit cards. We'll pay them off after the wedding with all the gift money." I felt sick. They were going deeper and deeper into debt, and somehow I was tangled up in all of it. When the second payment came due, the same thing happened. Brooke forgot. I called her. She asked me to cover it. I was $200 short in my checking account, so I put it on my own credit card, telling myself I'd pay it off with my next paycheck. I didn't. I started skipping things. The new work clothes I needed, dinners out with friends. I began buying the cheapest groceries I could find, stretching every dollar. Then Brooke called me crying about the honeymoon. "The wedding package doesn't include the honeymoon we really want," she sobbed. "We found the most perfect 2-week trip to Bali. It's only $15,000. Only $15,000? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "We need you to co-sign another small loan." "Absolutely not, Brooke. No, I'm already paying your wedding loan." "You're not paying it, I just needed help with a couple months." 2 months in a row. Things will get better. Justin has this amazing opportunity with a tech startup. Once that goes through, we'll be fine. The answer is no. She started crying harder. "I knew you didn't really support us." Within an hour, my parents were calling. My father was furious. "What is wrong with you? It's just a signature. They'll make the payments." "They're not making the current payments," I shouted. "I've paid $3,000 in the last 2 months. "Then you shouldn't have co-signed if you couldn't handle it," my mother said coldly. The gaslighting was breathtaking. They'd forced me to co-sign, and now they were blaming me for the consequences. They wore me down over the next several days. Phone calls, text messages. My mother showed up at my apartment with Brooke, both of them crying. Finally, exhausted and broken, I agreed to give them $5,000 from my savings as a gift for the honeymoon. Not a loan, a gift, because I knew I'd never see that money again. Brooke barely thanked me. This helps, but we really needed $15,000. My savings account, which I'd spent years building, was nearly empty. The third month's payment came and went. Brooke didn't pay. I covered another $1,600, maxing out my credit card to do it. Then something strange happened. I was at my parents' house for Sunday dinner, and Brooke and Justin were there showing photos on Justin's laptop. I was clearing dishes from the table when I passed behind them and glanced at the screen. Property listings in Costa Rica, beautiful homes with ocean views, prices listed in the hundreds of thousands. Justin noticed me looking and quickly closed the laptop. Planning a honeymoon destination? I asked casually, trying to keep my voice light. Brooke and Justin exchanged a look. A long, meaningful look that made my stomach twist. "Oh, we're just daydreaming about future vacation homes," Brooke said with a forced laugh. You know, once Justin's business takes off. But I'd seen the details. Those weren't vacation homes, they were permanent residences, and the prices were in the $500,000 range. How could two people who couldn't afford a $1,600 monthly payment be looking at $500,000 properties? That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of what I'd seen. Around 2 a.m, I got up and opened my laptop. I logged into my bank account and pulled up the loan details. Brooke's email address was listed on the account. I knew Brooke used the same password for everything, the name of our childhood dog, followed by her birth year. I'd seen her type it 100 times. I shouldn't have done it. I knew it was wrong, but I had to know. I used the password recovery function on her email and entered the password I knew she used. It worked. What I found made me physically ill. Bank statements showing wire transfers to offshore accounts. Emails discussing Costa Rican property purchases with real estate agents in San Jose. Correspondence with international banks about setting up accounts. Flight price comparisons for one-way tickets to Costa Rica. And then I found the email that made my blood run cold. From Justin to Brooke, dated 2 weeks before they'd asked me to co-sign the loan. "Once we're settled in CR, they can't touch us. No extradition for civil debt. We'll have enough from both loans to buy a place outright and live comfortably for years. Your sister is the perfect patsy. She's responsible, has good credit, and your parents can guilt her into anything." Brooke's response. "LOL, I know, right? My stupid sister has no idea. She'll be stuck with everything while we're living in paradise. Mom and Dad will probably help her make a few payments out of guilt, but eventually they'll realize it's hopeless. Not my problem anymore." I read the emails 3 times, 4 times, unable to believe what I was seeing. They'd planned this from the beginning. The wedding loan was never meant to be repaid. I was always the mark. The sucker. The one who'd be left holding the bag while they disappeared. I sat in the dark, the laptop screen casting a blue glow on my face, and realized I'd been played from the very start. I barely slept for the next week. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those emails. My sister's words. My stupid sister has no idea. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I printed out the most damning emails and drove to Brooke and Justin's apartment. It was a Friday evening. I pounded on the door until Brooke opened it, looking annoyed. "Edie? What are you doing here?" I pushed past her into the apartment. Justin was on the couch, beer in hand, watching television. "We need to talk," I said, throwing the printed emails on their coffee table. Brooke's face went white, then red. Then something cold and hard settled over her features. "You went through my private emails?" "That's illegal, Edie. That's a violation of federal law. You're planning to steal $75,000 and flee the country, and you're worried about email privacy?" Justin stood up, and I realized how tall he was. How much bigger than me. He took a step forward. "You need to leave," he said, his voice low and threatening. "Not until you explain this." I pointed at the emails. "You planned this from the beginning. You were never going to pay back the loan." "Prove it," Brooke said, crossing her arms. "Those emails don't prove anything. We were just fantasizing about moving abroad someday." "Fantasizing? You've been transferring money to offshore accounts. That's our money. We can do what we want with it. It's not your money. It's loan money that I'm responsible for. Justin took another step toward me. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave, and you're not going to tell anyone about this. Because if you try to report us for fraud, guess what? The loan is in your name too. You'll go down right along with us. And good luck proving we lied on the application. The bank already approved us. My parents. Brooke laughed. A cruel, mocking sound. Mom and Dad won't believe you. They never do. You're just the jealous older sister who can't stand to see me happy. That's what they'll think. That's what everyone will think. Justin opened the door. Get out. You're not going to get away with this, I said, my voice shaking. We already have, Brooke said sweetly. Now get out before I call the police, and tell them you broke into my email and are harassing us. Justin physically guided me toward the door, not quite pushing, but making it clear I needed to leave. I found myself in the hallway, the door slamming behind me, standing there shaking with rage and fear and disbelief. I drove straight to my parents' house. My father answered the door in his pajamas. Edie, it's 9 at night. I need to show you something. I sat them down at their kitchen table and laid out everything. The emails, the property listings, the offshore accounts, the plan to flee to Costa Rica. My mother looked at the papers, then at me, then back at the papers. This must be fake, she said finally. Brooke would never do something like this. It's not fake. I pulled it from her email, which you accessed illegally, my father said. You could be prosecuted for that. Are you serious right now? Your daughter is planning to commit fraud, and you're worried about how I found out? My mother's face hardened. I think you're making this up because you regret co-signing. You're trying to sabotage your sister's wedding. Why would I make this up? Jealousy, my father said simply. You're 32 and single. Your younger sister is getting married, having this beautiful wedding, and you can't stand it. So you fabricate this story. I'm not fabricating anything. These emails could be faked, my mother said. Anyone can fake an email. I stared at them in disbelief. The evidence was right in front of them and they were choosing not to believe it. You need to leave, my father said. And I think you need to consider therapy. This jealousy is unhealthy. I left their house feeling like I was losing my mind. Was I crazy? Were the emails not as clear as I thought? No. I'd seen what I'd seen. They were real. But my family had chosen Brooke. They'd always chosen Brooke. The 4th month's payment came due. I waited. Brooke didn't pay. I couldn't afford to cover it. My savings were gone. My credit card was maxed out. I was $200 short of the payment. For the first time, the payment went unpaid. The phone calls started immediately. Allied Recovery Services, multiple calls per day, to my cell phone. Then, horrifyingly, to my work phone. I was in a meeting when my desk phone rang and rang and rang. My boss Angela glanced at me with raised eyebrows. During my lunch break, I checked my messages. 12 calls, all from the collection agency. I called them back and tried to explain. My sister was supposed to make these payments. She's the primary borrower. Ma'am, we don't care who was supposed to pay. The debt is in your name. You're legally obligated. Can you stop calling my work number? We'll call any number associated with your account until payment is received. The harassment was constant. Calls at 8 in the morning, calls at 9 at night. Multiple times during my workday. I started sending them all to voicemail, but then my voicemail box filled up and important work messages couldn't get through. My sleep suffered. I lay awake at night, anxiety clawing at my chest. My appetite disappeared. I lost 15 pounds in a month. At work, I made mistakes I'd never made before. Missed deadlines. Forgot meetings. The 5th month came. I managed to scrape together $800, half the payment. It wasn't enough. More late fees piled on. The debt that had started at $75,000 was now approaching $78,000 with all the fees and accumulated interest. I tried calling Brooke every single day. She stopped answering. I sent text messages. No response. I drove to their apartment. The landlord told me they'd moved out, broken their lease 3 months early, and left no forwarding address. They were gone, just vanished. And I was left with a debt I couldn't pay and no way to find them. Then everything got worse. It was a Tuesday morning. I was in a conference room with my boss Angela and an important client, presenting a marketing strategy. My phone was on my desk outside the room, but I could hear it ringing. Once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. When we took a break 15 minutes later, I checked my phone. 6 missed calls from Allied Recovery Services. Before I could even put the phone down, it rang again. "Stop calling me," I hissed into the phone, trying to keep my voice down. "You owe $81,000, the collector said loudly. So loudly that my coworker in the next cubicle looked up. "We will pursue all legal remedies. I'm at work. You can't call me here. We can and we will until you pay your debt." I hung up. My hands were shaking. Other coworkers were staring. I could see them whispering. The calls continued. Every day, multiple times a day. They'd call the main office line and ask for me by name. They were rude to our receptionist. Once, they called during a client presentation, and the client heard the commotion outside the conference room. 3 weeks later, Angela called me into her office. "Edie, we need to talk." I knew what was coming. "These phone calls have become a significant disruption," she said. Her voice careful and professional. "I understand you're going through something difficult, but I have to think about the company, about our other employees, about our clients." "I'm trying to handle it," I said, hearing the desperation in my own voice. "I've asked them to stop." "I know you have. But it's not stopping, and your work has suffered. You've missed 3 deadlines this month. You forgot about the presentation to the Johnson account. This isn't like you." "Please," I whispered. "I need this job." Angela looked genuinely sorry. "I'm sorry, Edie. I really am. But I can't keep you on. We're going to have to let you go." Just like that, I was unemployed. They gave me 2 weeks of severance pay and had me pack up my desk. I walked out of that building carrying a box of my belongings, my career in shambles, and $81,000 in debt that kept growing every single day. I sat in my car in the parking lot, unable to drive, unable to think, watching my phone light up with another call from the collection agency. I didn't answer. What was the point? I had no money to give them. I had no job, no income, no savings, a maxed out credit card, and a debt that was destroying my life. My sister had won. She'd destroyed me completely and disappeared without a trace. The next 2 months blurred together in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I filed for unemployment benefits, which provided some income, but nothing close to what I needed. My rent was $1,200 a month. The loan payment, which I could no longer make, was $1,600. Between food, utilities, and my car payment, I needed at least $2,000 a month just to survive. Unemployment gave me about $1,000. I applied to every job I could find: marketing positions, administrative roles, even retail jobs. Every application asked permission to run a credit check. My credit score had plummeted from 720 to 580. Employers saw that massive debt and decided I was too much of a risk. I got rejection after rejection, and each one felt like another nail in my coffin. By month 7, I was desperate. I finally got hired at a department store in the mall. $14 an hour. Part-time hours because they didn't want to provide benefits. I'd take home maybe $2,000 a month if I was lucky. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. The debt collectors didn't care about my circumstances. They called constantly, 10, 15, 20 times a day. They called my new workplace. The store manager pulled me aside after 3 days. "Edie, we can't have debt collectors calling here. It's unprofessional." "I'm trying to handle it," I said, feeling the familiar shame burning in my chest. "Handle it faster." I came home to my apartment one evening and found a notice taped to my door. 3-day pay or quit. I was 3 weeks behind on rent. I owed $3,600 and I had maybe $200 to my name. I called my property manager, a woman named Susan, who'd always been kind to me. "Susan, please, I just started a new job. I can catch up, I just need more time." "I'm sorry, Edie, I really am. But the owner is strict about this." 3 days. 3 days to come up with $3,600 I didn't have. I thought about calling my parents. My pride said no. My desperation said I had no choice. I dialed my mother's number. Edie? She sounded surprised. We hadn't spoken since the night I'd shown her the emails. Mom, I'm about to be evicted. I need help. We can't help you financially right now. Mom, please. I'm begging you. You made your choices, Edie. You need to deal with the consequences. My choices? You forced me to co-sign. We didn't force you to do anything. You're an adult. And honestly, this wouldn't have happened if you'd been more responsible with your finances. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Brooke is the one who didn't pay. We haven't heard from Brooke in months. She and Justin said they needed space from all the negative energy. The negative energy of me expecting them to pay their debt? I have to go, Edie. We can't help you. She hung up. 3 days later, I was evicted. I found a studio apartment in a rough part of town that didn't require a credit check. $600 a month. The size of a large closet. The neighborhood was known for crime, but it was all I could afford. I moved my belongings with a borrowed pickup truck, selling most of my furniture because it wouldn't fit. I went from a nice one-bedroom apartment in a safe area to a tiny studio where I heard sirens every night. My mattress went on the floor. My clothes stayed in boxes because there was no room for a dresser. The debt continued to grow. With late fees, collection fees, and accumulated interest, it had ballooned to $88,000. Allied Recovery Services filed a lawsuit. The papers were served to me at work. A sheriff's deputy walked into the department store, asked for me by name in front of customers, and handed me legal documents. My manager saw the whole thing. "We need to talk," he said. I knew what was coming, but I couldn't even fight it anymore. I was too tired, too defeated, but I kept my job barely. I went to court alone because I couldn't afford a lawyer. The judge reviewed my case. "Did you co-sign this loan?" she asked. "Yes, but my sister..." "Did you make the payments as agreed?" "I tried, but..." "Is your sister party to this lawsuit?" "No, she left the country." "Then, this court is only concerned with your obligations." Judgment for the plaintiff. You owe $88,000 plus legal fees of $5,000. Total, $93,000. Just like that, I had a judgment against me. They could garnish my wages, freeze my bank accounts, take everything. I walked out of the courthouse into the Phoenix heat, feeling like a shell of a person. That night, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize, but I knew who it was from the moment I opened it. "Hey sis, it's me. Just wanted to let you know Justin and I are doing great. We're moving to Costa Rica permanently next week. Starting our new life debt-free. Thanks for being the best sister ever, lol. Hope you're not too mad. You'll be fine. Family helps family, right?" There was a photo attached. Brooke and Justin at an airport. Big smiles. Suitcases packed. Behind them, a departure board showing a flight to San Jose, Costa Rica. Another text followed. "Hope you're not too mad. You'll be fine. Family helps family, right?" with a kissing emoji. I stared at that photo for a long time. My sister, grinning at the camera, about to board a plane to her new life. While I sat in a studio apartment in a dangerous neighborhood, working retail for $14 an hour, with $93,000 in debt hanging over my head. I called my mother one more time. "Did you know Brooke is leaving the country permanently?" Silence. "Mom?" She told us she needed a fresh start. A fresh start? She's fleeing the country to avoid the debt that's destroying my life. She's following her dreams, Edie. You should be happy for her. Did you help her? The silence stretched too long. "Did you help her leave the country?" I asked again, my voice rising. "We have to go." My father's voice came through the background. "Did you give her money to run away?" My mother hung up. I knew the answer. Of course they'd helped her. They'd probably given her money for the plane tickets. Maybe helped her set up her new life. While I was losing everything, they were helping my sister escape. I tried to report the fraud to the police. A tired officer in the Phoenix Police Department took my statement. But I could see in his eyes that nothing would come of it. "This is a civil matter," he said. "Your sister didn't steal from you. You willingly co-signed a loan. She lied on the application. You'd have to prove she intentionally lied, and you signed the same application, so you might be implicated in the fraud yourself." I left the police station knowing I had no legal recourse. The system wouldn't help me. I contacted a lawyer for a free consultation. He reviewed my documents and shook his head. "You could sue your sister, but she's left the country. You'd never collect. You could potentially sue your parents for coercion, but proving emotional coercion is almost impossible. And legal fees would run you $20,000 minimum. So I have no options? My honest advice? File for bankruptcy." Chapter 7. Wipe out the debt and start over. Bankruptcy. At 32 years old. For a wedding that wasn't even mine. I sat on the floor of my tiny studio apartment that night, surrounded by boxes I hadn't finished unpacking, researching bankruptcy attorneys I couldn't afford. My phone buzzed with another call from Allied Recovery Services. I let it go to voicemail. What did it matter anymore? They'd already taken everything. I didn't file for bankruptcy. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe I just couldn't accept that this was how my life had turned out. Instead, I kept working my retail job, kept living in my tiny studio, kept trying to put one foot in front of the other. But everything kept getting worse. My car insurance lapsed because I couldn't afford the payment. I knew it was illegal to drive without insurance, but I had no other way to get to work. 2 weeks later, I got pulled over for a broken taillight. The officer ran my information and discovered my insurance had expired. He wrote me a ticket for $350. Money I didn't have. The ticket went unpaid. A warrant was issued. Everything was cascading, one problem creating the next, and I couldn't stop any of it. The debt with Allied Recovery Services had grown to $88,000 with all the accumulated fees. They threatened me constantly. My wages would be garnished. My bank account would be frozen. Legal action was imminent. I made $50 a week after paying rent and utilities. There was no way to pay them. No way to catch up. No way out. My parents called occasionally, but only to criticize. "We heard you lost your nice apartment," my mother said during one call. "I was evicted because of Brooke's debt. If you'd been more responsible with your finances, this wouldn't have happened." "How is this my fault?" My father's voice came through. "Tell her we're disappointed." Disappointed in me? What about Brooke, who committed fraud and fled the country? Don't you dare talk about your sister that way. She's living her dream. You drove her away with your negativity. I hung up, realizing that my parents were truly lost to me. They'd chosen the golden child and would continue to choose her, no matter what she did. I was the scapegoat, and that would never change. Allied Recovery Services filed their lawsuit and won. Judgment: $93,000 including legal fees. Then the unthinkable happened. I came home from work to find a piece of certified mail stuffed in my door. It wasn't addressed to me. It was addressed to my parents, Linda and Thomas Brennan, at their home address. But it had been forwarded to my studio apartment. I knew I shouldn't open it. It was technically a federal crime, but desperation makes you do things you never thought you'd do. Inside was a notice from First National Mortgage Company. Notice of default and intent to foreclose. My parents were 3 months behind on their mortgage payments. 3 months. That was right around when Brooke had left for Costa Rica. I kept reading. The amount past due: $15,000. There was a second page, loan modification documents. My parents had taken out a home equity line of credit 6 months ago. The amount: $75,000. The same amount as the wedding loan. Co-signer on the HELOC, Brooke Brennan. Everything clicked into place. My parents had taken out their own loan for Brooke. $75,000. Using their house as collateral. Brooke was supposed to pay them back. Just like she was supposed to pay back the bank loan. She hadn't paid back either one. Brooke had scammed everyone. She'd gotten the $75,000 bank loan with me as co-signer. She'd gotten another $75,000 from our parents through the HELOC. $150,000 total. She'd taken it all and fled to Costa Rica, where she and Justin had bought a house in cash. My parents were victims too. They were facing foreclosure on the home they'd lived in for 30 years. But instead of admitting they'd been conned, instead of acknowledging that Brooke had destroyed all of us, they'd spent months blaming me. Making me the villain. Calling me jealous and irresponsible. They'd scapegoated me to avoid facing the truth that they'd been played just as badly as I had. My phone rang. My mother's number. I answered. "Edie, we need to talk." Her voice was shaking, vulnerable. I'd never heard her sound like this. "About the foreclosure notice?" She gasped. "How do you know about that?" "It got forwarded to my address." I opened it. Silence. Then she started crying. Real, broken crying. "We're going to lose our house." "You gave Brooke $75,000, I said flatly. "She said she needed it for the wedding and honeymoon. She promised to pay us back within a year. She said Justin's business was about to close a huge deal. So you knew she couldn't afford the bank loan either. That's why you pushed me so hard to co-sign. You needed someone else to be on the hook when it all fell apart. We didn't know she'd run away," my mother sobbed. "We thought she'd really pay us back." My father got on the line. He sounded defeated, nothing like his usual authoritative self. "We thought she was serious about the business." "You've been calling me jealous and irresponsible for months," I said, my voice cold. "You blamed me for everything. While you knew the whole time that Brooke had stolen from both of us." "We didn't know she'd disappear," my father said weakly. "Please, Edie," my mother begged. "You have to help us. We'll lose everything. The house we raised you in, all our equity, our retirement." The irony was almost funny. After everything they'd done to me, everything they'd said about me, they wanted my help. "I can't help you," I said. "I have $93,000 in debt and make $14 an hour. I can barely help myself." "But your family," my mother cried. "Family," I repeated. "That's what you told me when you forced me to co-sign. Family helps family. But you didn't help me, did you? When I was being sued, when I was evicted, when I lost my job, you called me jealous. You said I was irresponsible. You chose Brooke over me every single time." "We made a mistake," my father said quietly. "Yes, you did." I hung up. Then I sat down and thought about that addendum I'd added to the loan agreement almost a year ago. The one I'd forged with my parents' signatures. The one that made them secondary guarantors. I pulled out my old copy of the loan documents and found it stapled to the back. Right there in black and white. If I could prove they'd coerced me into signing, and if this addendum was part of the official loan record, they could be held liable. I went through my phone. I'd saved the voice messages from when they were pressuring me. My mother's voice. "Stop being selfish. We raised you better than this." My father, "You have a responsibility to help family." Dozens of messages, all evidence of coercion. I had the text messages too, weeks of them, pressuring me, guilting me, manipulating me. I contacted Allied Recovery Services and asked to speak to their legal department. A lawyer named Gerald Thompson took my call. "I have new information about the loan default," I said. I sent him everything, the addendum, the recordings, the text messages, the proof that my parents had also given Brooke $75,000. Evidence that they'd known about her plans. 3 days later, Gerald called me back. "Miss Brennan, this changes things significantly. If your parents are part of the loan agreement and they coerced you into signing, we can pursue them as guarantors, especially since they have assets." The house on Maple Street. I took a deep breath. This was the moment. Once I said yes, there was no going back. "Yes," I said, "pursue them." Allied Recovery Services filed an amended lawsuit adding Linda and Thomas Brennan as defendants. Secondary guarantors per the loan addendum. Co-conspirators who aided in fraud. The papers were served to my parents at their home. My father called me within an hour. "What have you done?" "What you did to me." "You forged our signatures!" my mother screamed in the background. "And you coerced me into signing. We can let a court decide who's more at fault." "We're your parents," my father shouted. "And you sacrificed me for your golden child. You called me jealous when I was the victim. You blamed me when you knew the truth. Now you get to face the same consequences I've been living with." "We'll lose our house," my mother cried. I lost my apartment, my job, my savings, my credit, my entire life. Welcome to my world. While I was still on the phone with them, I heard their other line beep. Hold on, my mother said. Someone's calling. A moment later, I heard her scream. My father got back on the line, his voice shaking. A debt collector just called us. They said we owe $93,000. They said our home will be seized. Yes, I said calmly. That's what I've been dealing with for the past 10 months. The constant calls, the threats, the harassment, except I had nothing to lose. You have a house. They can take that. You can't do this to us, my mother wailed. Those are your words, I said, from 10 months ago, when you were forcing me to co-sign. Family helps family. This is what family does. Remember? Please, my father said, and I'd never heard him beg before. Enjoy the debt collector calls, I said. They'll call you 10, 15 times a day. At dinner, early in the morning, late at night. They'll be rude. They'll threaten you. They'll make you feel worthless. Just like they did to me. Just like you made me feel. I hung up and blocked their numbers. For the first time in almost a year, my phone was silent. The debt collectors weren't calling me anymore. They were calling my parents instead. I sat in my tiny studio apartment, looking at the foreclosure notice on my lap, and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Relief. The legal battle moved forward quickly. Allied Recovery Services had an entire team of lawyers, and they were motivated. $93,000 was real money, and now they had defendants with actual assets to collect from. I was called as a witness. The court date was set for a Tuesday morning in October. I took the day off work, which I couldn't afford to do, and showed up at the courthouse in the only professional clothes I still owned. The courtroom was small, and the air conditioning wasn't working well. My parents sat with their lawyer, a tired-looking man in an ill-fitting suit who I suspected was not very expensive. They both looked 10 years older than the last time I had seen them. My mother's hair had gone almost completely gray. My father's face was drawn and exhausted. They wouldn't look at me. Judge Margaret Whitmore presided. She was a black woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and no patience for nonsense. Allied Recovery's attorney, a polished woman named Sarah Chen, presented their case methodically. She entered the loan agreement into evidence, including the addendum listing my parents as secondary guarantors. She played the voicemails of my parents pressuring me. She showed the text messages, dozens of them, guilting and manipulating me into signing. Then she brought out the documentation of the HELOC my parents had given to Brooke. $75,000, co-signed by Brooke, now in default. The foreclosure notice. These defendants, Sarah said, gave their daughter $75,000 at the same time they were pressuring their other daughter to co-sign a separate $75,000 loan. They knew the primary borrower was unreliable. They knew she'd defaulted on their loan. Yet they coerced Edie Brennan into accepting this risk, using familial obligation as a weapon. My parents' attorney tried to argue that the signatures on the addendum were forged, that I'd committed fraud, that they bore no legal responsibility. Judge Whitmore cut him off. Counsel, whether these signatures are authentic or not, the evidence clearly shows your clients actively coerced their daughter into accepting this debt. They had first-hand knowledge that the primary borrower was defaulting on a separate loan to them, yet they pressured Miss Brennan to sign anyway. That demonstrates culpable involvement. She reviewed the documents, the recordings, the text messages. Did you pressure your daughter to co-sign this loan? She asked my father directly. He had to answer. He was under oath. We encouraged her to help family, he said weakly. Did you give your other daughter $75,000 around the same time? That was a separate loan, a private family matter. A loan she has also not repaid? Silence. And you are now defaulting on that loan, correct? We've had financial difficulties. Yet you pressured your other daughter to take on additional debt for the same person who defaulted on your loan. Why would you do that? My father had no answer. Judge Whitmore looked at the evidence for a long moment, then she spoke. The court finds that while the signatures on the addendum may have been added without the defendant's explicit consent, their actions demonstrate clear involvement in the debt. They coerced their daughter into co-signing. They had knowledge of the primary borrower's unreliability. They benefited from having another party responsible when they knew default was likely. Therefore, the court finds the defendants liable as secondary guarantors. Judgment for the plaintiff. Linda and Thomas Brennan must pay $93,000, plus court costs of $2,300, plus Miss Brennan's legal fees of $1,500. The gavel came down. My parents sat frozen. My mother started crying silently. My father stared at his hands. End of Lig, chapter.com. $96,800. They didn't have it. I knew they didn't have it. Outside the courthouse, my father approached me. My mother stood a few feet away, tears streaming down her face. "Are you happy now?" he asked. "No," I said honestly. "I'm not happy. But I'm not sorry either. We'll lose everything. The house, our retirement, everything we worked for. I lost everything too, Dad. The difference is, I lost it because of your choices. You're losing it because of your own." "We're your parents," he said, and his voice broke. "You were my parents. But when I needed you, when I was drowning, you blamed me. You called me jealous. You chose Brooke. You always chose Brooke." My mother walked over, makeup running down her face. "Please, there has to be another way. We can work something out. We can pay you back slowly." That's what Brooke said to me, that she'd pay me back. How did that work out? "We're not Brooke," my father said. "No, you're worse. Because you raised me to believe that family meant something. That loyalty mattered, but you only meant loyalty to Brooke. I was just the backup plan, the responsible one who would clean up the messes." "What about forgiveness?" my mother whispered. "What about accountability?" I shot back. "What about taking responsibility for what you did? What about apologizing? Not just now, when you're facing consequences, but months ago when I was losing everything and you were calling me names?" My mother's face crumpled. "I'm sorry." 2 words, too late. "I hope you learn something from this," I said. "I hope when you're living in whatever small apartment you can afford, you think about the daughter who tried to warn you. The daughter you threw away for your golden child. The daughter who loved you even when you didn't deserve it." I walked away. They called after me, but I didn't turn around. Allied Recovery Services moved quickly to collect. Within 3 weeks, they'd placed a lien on my parents' house. My parents couldn't afford to pay the judgment, so they were forced to sell. Their house, where I'd grown up, where they'd lived for 33 years, sold for $310,000. After paying off their existing mortgage, the home equity line of credit that Brooke had defaulted on, and the judgment, they were left with about $60,000. They bought a small 2-bedroom condo in a less desirable part of Phoenix. A massive downgrade. Their retirement plans were destroyed. Their financial security was gone. I heard about all this through my aunt, my mother's sister, who'd reached out to me with sympathy. She was one of the few family members who believed me about what Brooke had done. "Your mother calls me crying every night," Aunt Patricia told me. But I told her, "You reap what you sow." My mother called me once more, from a new number I hadn't blocked. "I hope you're happy," she said, her voice bitter. "You've destroyed your family." "No, Mom. Brooke destroyed this family. You enabled her. And you blamed me for being her victim. We made mistakes, but we're still your parents. Doesn't that mean anything?" "It used to," I said. "It used to mean everything. But you taught me that family was conditional, that it only applied when I was useful, when I was the responsible one who fixed problems. When I needed you, you weren't there. How can you be so cold?" I learned from the best. "Goodbye, Mom." I hung up and blocked the new number too. Meanwhile, news reached me about Brooke through social media and mutual acquaintances. I'd blocked her on everything, but people still talked. The fraud charges I'd helped file had gone through. Wire fraud. Loan fraud. Theft by deception. The U.S. Attorney's Office issued an arrest warrant. Brooke couldn't return to the United States without being arrested. She was effectively exiled. Costa Rica wouldn't extradite for non-violent financial crimes. She was safe there, but trapped, and her paradise wasn't lasting. Justin, it turned out, had gambling debts. He'd run up tens of thousands in Costa Rica's underground casinos. Their marriage was falling apart. They'd burned through the stolen money. The house they'd bought had to be sold to pay Justin's debts. Within 2 years of fleeing, Brooke was working at a beach bar in a tourist town, living in a one-room apartment, her marriage over, unable to ever come home. I found this out from a mutual friend who'd vacationed in Costa Rica and had seen her. The friend sent me a photo. Brooke looked worn out, older, unhappy. The smug smile from that airport photo was long gone. I felt a sense of justice. Not happiness, exactly, but justice. After the judgment against my parents, Allied Recovery Services contacted me with news I'd never expected to hear. Since the court had ruled that my parents were secondary guarantors and they'd paid the debt through the sale of their house, I was released from the obligation. The $93,000 was marked as paid by guarantor on my credit report. It wasn't perfect, but it was infinitely better than unpaid debt or judgment. My credit score started climbing, slowly at first. 600, 620, 650. I kept working at the department store, but I started applying for better jobs again. This time, with my improving credit and without the crushing weight of debt collectors calling constantly, I had better luck. 4 months after the court case, I got hired as a marketing coordinator at a nonprofit organization that helped victims of financial fraud. The irony wasn't lost on me. The pay wasn't as good as my old job, but it was meaningful work. I was helping people who'd been through what I'd been through. My boss, a woman named Helen Rodriguez, who'd survived a similar family betrayal, understood my story. She hired me despite my credit history because she saw past the numbers to the truth. I moved to a better apartment. 1 bedroom, safe neighborhood, clean and quiet. I bought furniture piece by piece, replacing what I'd lost. Nothing fancy, but it was mine, and I'd earned it. The debt collector calls stopped. The anxiety that had been my constant companion for over a year slowly faded. I could sleep through the night again. My appetite returned. I gained back the weight I'd lost, plus a few healthy pounds. But the emotional damage was harder to heal. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Patricia Sanders, using the mental health benefits from my new job. We met every week in her small office that smelled like lavender. "You were the scapegoat child," Dr. Sanders explained during one session. "Your sister was the golden child. Your parents created that dynamic, probably when you were both very young. It was never about what you did or didn't do. The roles were assigned before you could even understand what was happening. So nothing I did would have mattered? Nothing. You could have been perfect, and you still would have been blamed when things went wrong. That's how scapegoating works. The scapegoat exists to take responsibility for the family's problems. This knowledge was freeing in a way I hadn't expected. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't jealous or selfish or any of the things my parents had called me. I was a victim of a toxic family dynamic that had existed my entire life. I started building a new life, carefully and intentionally. I joined a support group for people recovering from family estrangement. I met others who'd been scapegoated, blamed, gaslit by the people who were supposed to love them unconditionally. I learned that I wasn't alone. I started dating again, cautiously. I met Aaron at a volunteer event for the nonprofit. He was an accountant, stable and honest, with kind eyes and a gentle sense of humor. On our first coffee date, I told him I had trust issues. He said he understood. We took things slowly. He showed up when he said he would. He kept his promises. He respected my boundaries. When I finally told him the whole story about Brooke and the loan and my parents, he listened without judgment. "Your family failed you," he said simply. "But that doesn't define you. You survived. You fought back. You're stronger than you know." I cried that night. Not from sadness, but from relief. Someone saw me. Someone understood. 2 years after the court case, I was 34 years old. I'd been promoted to senior coordinator at the nonprofit. My credit score had climbed back to 710. I had savings again. Not much, but enough to feel secure. Aaron and I were serious, talking about moving in together. I had limited contact with my parents. Holiday cards. Brief emails. No visits. They'd reached out a few times. Mostly my mother. always with the same refrain. "Can't you forgive us? We're family." But they never truly apologized. They never acknowledged the full weight of what they'd done. They just wanted me to forget and move on so they could feel better about themselves. I learned that some relationships are too broken to fix. That sometimes, the healthiest thing you can do is walk away. I had no contact with Brooke. She sent a few emails over the years from various addresses, always the same tone, asking for money, asking for help, claiming she'd changed. I deleted them all without reading past the first line. One evening, I sat on my apartment balcony with Aaron. The Phoenix sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. The mountains in the distance looked purple in the fading light. Aaron handed me a cup of tea, and we sat together in comfortable silence. My phone buzzed. An email from an address I didn't recognize. B. Parker at some email service. Brooke's married name. Though I'd heard through the grapevine that she and Justin had divorced. Subject line, "Can we talk?" I looked at it for a long moment. My thumb hovered over the notification. Aaron glanced at my phone, then at me, but said nothing. He'd learned to let me handle my family issues in my own way. I could open it, read whatever excuse or plea or manipulation she'd crafted. I could engage, respond, maybe even help her if she was in trouble. Or I could close a door that should have been closed years ago. I deleted the email without opening it. Then, I blocked the address. Some doors should stay closed. I looked at Aaron. He smiled at me, understanding everything without words. This was my family now. Not the one I was born into, but the one I'd chosen. The one that chose me back. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, and I meant it. "I'm okay." I'd learned a hard lesson over the past few years. They say blood is thicker than water, but that's only half the quote. The full saying is, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. The bonds we choose are stronger than the ones we're born into. My parents had demanded loyalty from me my entire life. Family first. Family helps family. But they'd never extended that loyalty to me. It was conditional, one-sided, only valid when I was useful to them or to Brooke. I'd learned that protecting yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. That demanding accountability, even from your parents, isn't cruel, it's necessary. That walking away from toxic people, even when they share your DNA, isn't giving up, it's choosing yourself. I'd learned that sometimes, the only way to win is to let toxic people face the consequences of their own actions. And I'd learned that family isn't determined by blood. It's determined by loyalty, respect, and love that flows both ways. I looked at Aaron, at the sunset, at the life I'd built from the ashes of the one my sister had destroyed. I thought about my job helping other fraud victims, about my apartment that I'd furnished with my own money, about the peace I felt for the first time in years. I was free. Not free of the memories, not free of the pain, but free of the obligation to people who'd never valued me. Free of the guilt they'd used as a weapon. Free of the toxic dynamic that had defined my entire childhood. I'd survived. More than that, I'd rebuilt. And the life I'd rebuilt was mine, truly mine. That was worth everything. So let me ask you something. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely? Someone in your own family? How did you handle it? Did you fight back or walk away? I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, if you've experienced something similar or know someone who has, please hit that like button. And if you want to hear more stories about real people facing real challenges and finding their way through, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's being blamed for problems they didn't create. Someone who needs permission to protect themselves. Someone who needs to know they're not alone. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. I hope wherever you are in your journey, you find the strength to choose yourself. You deserve it. Take care of yourselves. And remember, family is what you make it.